Okay, I'm going to start now. I'm sure we'll have other people joining us as we begin, but yes, we'll start now. So thank you everybody for joining us this evening. My name is Gemma Holyoke and I work for Community-Led Housing London. We are a resource and advice hub for community-led housing projects across the capital. Also on the call is other people in our team, so our director, Levant Caramel, our land and development lead, Brendan Conway, and senior project advisor, Rowan Mackay. So we work with groups across the capital who are looking to build and provide more community-led homes. All over London, groups of people are coming together to take control and lead housing projects in their local area. They're showing that housing can be more than a financial asset. It can bring people together and give them power. In the last few months, we've seen just how important our homes, neighbours and communities are. And this experience has raised some fundamental questions about how we live and the kind of homes we need. In a city of renters, for example, what can we do to address the precarity experienced by tenants in London? Having been inspired by community organising and neighbours coming together to support one another, how can we build care into the way that we design and live in our homes, not just in a time of crisis, but forever? And how can we take what we've learned already and apply the principles that underpin community-led housing at scale across London? Answers to these questions exist, and we're excited to welcome this evening's speakers from 3 projects that are challenging the way that we build homes in London. So firstly, what is community-led housing? When we think of our housing options, there's private ownership, shared ownership, or renting from a private or social landlord. Community-led housing is when people come together to collectively control their housing and play a leading and lasting role in developing and managing housing, which might be building new homes or taking ownership of existing buildings or homes. So it follows these principles. Meaningful community engagement and consent occurs throughout the development process. There's a presumption that the community group or organisation will take a long-term formal role in the ownership, stewardship or management of the homes, and that the benefits to the local area or specified community are clearly defined and protected in perpetuity. So that can take many different forms, and we're going to look at some of the models this evening. But the most important thing is a determined and enthusiastic group that wants to take the project forward. As I said, we're working across London. So this is a map of some of the projects that we are involved with and supporting. And there's a huge variety from smaller startup groups to supporting neighbourhood forums or tenant management organisations looking to expand on their estate. I think that's so. Why would you want to take control of your housing? Well, one advantage is transparency and accountability. Being part of the organisation means you have a role in making decisions and are equally accountable to one another for the successful governance and running of the organisation. It's also resident-led. The people who know their homes the best are the people who live in them. They understand root causes and issues, and residents often have solutions that not only work for themselves, but bring wider benefits to their area. Tonight, we're going to look over some examples of community-led housing and how groups in London are coming together to lead their own housing solutions. So our first speaker today, we're going to hear from Amin from Zara Housing Cooperative. Zara Housing Cooperative are a group of families in Harrow looking for affordable intergenerational housing. And their collective experience of living in private rented housing has been disempowering. So what is a housing cooperative? Housing cooperatives are when residents come together and collectively manage their housing. For example, they may take control of the maintenance of the homes or set and collect rents. Co-ops UK state there are over 300 housing cooperatives in London, and the oldest purpose-built housing co-op in the UK is Sanford in New Cross. There are around 125 tenant members, and we're supporting them as they look to expand. A cooperative is democratically controlled, by the cooperative's membership, where each member has equal voting rights. A fully mutual cooperative, where all members are residents and all residents are members. So if you move into the co-op, you become a member and you have voting rights. When you move out, you also leave the cooperative. But there are also other types. Short-life cooperatives provide short-term accommodation for their members, and they often take management of the building with a license to occupy for an agreed amount of time, which might be a few months or a few years. You also have tenant management cooperatives, where residents come together to manage their homes, but don't necessarily become the landlord. We think cooperatives have the potential to reimagine rented housing in London and challenge top-down landlord-tenant relationships. As a renter, whether private or social, you have limited control over the maintenance, repairs, and rents. Forming a cooperative with your neighbours could be an opportunity to take collective control over these. Zara Housing Cooperative are looking for a long-term, secure alternative to private rent, and we've been supporting them with their proposal to build 3 homes on a small garage site in Harrow. So that's enough from me, and I'm going to hand over to Amin from Zara Housing Co-op.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I'm just going to load up your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Gemma. My name is Amin Lilani, and I'm from Zara Housing Cooperative. The cooperative consists of 3 families. With large families in that we have our parents and obviously our children are living with us. And so that's not unusual, but but obviously the housing out there does not cater for larger families. There are many large families out there, but they don't all get to live with each other, support each other, and care for each other, and we would like the opportunity to do that. So this idea of having housing that caters for more than one generation is important to us, and it's something that's unique to our project. I'll start with what motivated us to come together and create a cooperative. So going back to 2017, I mean, even going back further back, we've always, me and my group have always rented our accommodation. Myself, I was evicted from my accommodation, not because I didn't pay the rent, but because the landlord wanted to sell the house and buy something for his kids, which is fair enough. But that meant that me and my family had to live in a hotel for a month. So obviously we are renting again, but it is nowhere adequate in terms of our needs. The same sort of theme follows with other families where they've been evicted or asked to leave their housing in short notice. So we were all in the same boat. Housing is a very hot and contentious issue in London, probably throughout the UK. And at that time, there was no real solution. You either went to the private market, which is not affordable for most of the people. Like, I'm a civil servant, my salary doesn't go up as much as the private sector does. And affordability of the private sector and renting something suitable for the for your family is very difficult in London. The other solution is obviously the government sector or the council housing, which is impossible to get into unless you're there for years and years. And we were always looking for something in between or an alternative. And I came across the concept of CLTs and reading through an article in BBC, and we were actually at the beginning trying to create a CLT, but we were advised to create a cooperative, which would be much more successful and easier to manage. That's what we did. And the person was advising us saying, you need, obviously you guys need to start looking for land, and Harrow is where we started, because that's where we live. So I started contacting Harrow about who we are and what we are, and somehow I think we got there at the right time, because we were invited to join these workshops that Harrow was running, not on community housing, but it was alternative housing that they were trying to introduce within Harrow. And we ended up with some money from Harrow to create a project where we identified some land and put a project around that piece of property in terms of how we could build something on that piece of land. And we did that for a while, um, but obviously we're not builders and we're not project managers, and we had very little information in terms of how we want to do this and who's going to fund it. And it was very, very lucky for us that how community housing came along and introduced themselves. Somehow I got introduced to community housing, and I joined the bandwagon, if you like, for community-led housing, and I joined them as somebody who has potential for a successful project. So during 2018 and 19, we worked on our project, guided and advised by Community Housing London, and coming up to 2020, we received a approval in principle from Harrow, which was a milestone in our project, in our story. Um, I'm just looking at the screen now because I've been reading from my book. So the image that you can see on the screen basically describes what we're trying to do, is to have a house that caters for more than one generation. The grandparents, the main couple, if you like, and the kids. And it right now what's happening is people can't move out of their parents' house anyway because it's so expensive to rent something or buy something for yourself. So why not have housing that caters for more than one generation, big enough and designed in a way that can be flexible. And I think that this can be an answer, or one of the answers to London's housing problem. Build bigger and more well-designed housing that can cater for more than one family or one generation. And I'm proud of the fact that we are going for this project, and hopefully with community housing's help, we will get there. But that image is very important to us. It speaks volume about who we are and what we're trying to do. I don't know how long I've got left, Gemma, but so we've received approval in principle from Harrow in terms of getting the land that we want from Harrow. And we are in process of designing houses that can fit on that piece of land. Community housing has not only advised us, but also taught us how to do things. For example, how to tender for architects. In future, obviously, we'll be tendering for builders. How to manage your finances. We have an excellent example of how a model can be created on a spreadsheet in terms of how much we're going to have to pay for rent, how much we will be paying to build these houses, grants if they're available, and so on and so forth. So I can't thank them enough. I've been involved with them since the beginning. If it wasn't for them, I don't think we'd be here by now. So if there are people out there who want to um, create their own project, community-led housing is one of the best ways to do it. And I'd also recommend the cooperative route because it gives you those flexibilities that you need within a group to come together, put something together, have rules around your cooperative, and then take it forward. A cooperative, I mean, the way I see a cooperative is like a business having a non-profit organization or non-profit business where you, the individuals or the groups are partners or members, if you like, and you all share within the uh, within the task that needs to be done to bring the project to an end. It is very flexible, and it did help us to focus our mind and bring us into an entity that can be introduced to other people. So if you go out and look for a loan or a mortgage to basically fund your project, you can't just go on there as your blog or here we are a group of people. If you are an organized cooperative with rules, then they take you more seriously. So a cooperative is a very good business model for people out there who want to do community-led housing. The pictures that you can see on the screen now are what our architect has come up with. He's done an excellent job. He's basically showing us how the houses can look from every angle. Um, Having a good architect is very, very important. Again, community housing can advise you on how you can or how you should choose a good architect and what you need to get out of them. I think we're getting what we want out of the current architect, and hopefully he'll take us all the way to building these houses. It's very hard to see from this shot where our houses are going to be, but as I said, there are various slides that our architect created for us, which shows us every angle of these houses and how living there can feel like. We're obviously having an input into the design, an internal design of the houses. We didn't like what he produced the first time, so we sort of have our own input into the layout of the houses. Um, Internal, external, whatever, you can always have a say because you're building these houses, and that's the beauty of community housing or this project is that we dictate how they look inside and outside, um, and once they're finished, hopefully they will be affordable. That is a very, very bold statement to make. Living in London, affordable housing. If you want affordable housing, you'll have to go to the council or get yourself into a cooperative or a CLT. Here we are building our own affordable housing, which is amazing. And the rents are going to be affordable. We will be our own landlords. Nobody can kick us out. Um, and they will be there in perpetuity. And the rents are always going to be affordable. If any of the tenants move out or members or cooperative members move out, the next family that comes in will pay exactly the same rent. We're not trying to make a profit out of this project. We're trying to provide affordable housing in perpetuity. And the opportunity to do that is very empowering, especially in London, where going back to 2016, 17, there was absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing around that you could afford, that there was no light at the end of the tunnel, and it can be really, really um, disappointing to have the money to pay rent, but then at the same time being evicted because it's just your rent is just not good enough because the house that you live in is wanted by somebody else who's paying more rent or the landlord just doesn't like you anymore. Sorry, Gemma, am I ranting?
Yeah, I was just about to say we might move on to the next project, but we do have questions for you, Amin. We've had somebody saying, what advice would you give to new groups? Adam's just posted, when did you set up a cooperative during the timeline of your project? But I think what we'll do is we'll take all the questions, and then in the second half of the event, we'll bring them all together in a discussion. But please do keep posting your questions in the Q&A. Rowan and I are keeping a note of them, and then we'll ask all the questions all in one go at the end. So yes, please do continue posting in there. I also just want to say we've got 60 people on the call, so it's really great that you've all joined us. And we hope that discussion at the end will be really lively as well. And thank you, Amin, for presenting your project. I think Brendan's put in here all your hard work coming to fruition. It's inspirational stuff.
Thank you, Gemma. I'll go quiet now.
I'll bring you back into the discussion, Amin, because I think people want to ask questions.
Sure.
Brilliant. So next, we're going to be hearing from Kathy from the London Older Lesbian Co-housing Project. So I'm just going to say a little bit about co-housing. Co-housing is an approach to designing and living in homes that are sociable and inclusive. It's an intentional way of living, which includes both the provision of private and common facilities, such as gardens, a common room, or laundry, striking a balance between household privacy and community. There's an increasing interest in co-housing as people look to strengthen connections with their neighbours, sharing not only resources and spaces, but common social activities such as gardening and cooking. You may have seen press coverage of the Older Women's Co-housing Project in Barnet or Marmalade Lane in Cambridge and thought you'd quite like to live like that too. The principles of co-housing are common amongst all community-led housing projects, but also in some conventional housing projects. If people are looking to co-housing as the answer to the way we want to live, what do we want from our homes? What does co-housing provide, which conventional housing projects are missing? So we're going to hear from Kathy. Kathy is a member of London Older Lesbian Co-housing, as I said. The group was founded in 2016 when founding member Jude was chatting with friends about how they wanted to live together as they got older. The group are working in partnership with a large housing association to build around 20 units, of which 25 to 30% will be affordably rented and the remainder available under the Older People's Shared Ownership Scheme or bought outright. Kathy, I'm going to load up your presentation and pass over to you. So just give me 1 minute. Might have to call on my colleague Rowan here to help me out.
Would you like me to start? And then if they come up, they come up. If they don't, they don't. Sorry, I can't hear you now, Gemma. I can't.
Apologies, everyone. This bit of technical issue here. Can everybody hear me now?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Kathy, you're unmuted. If you could start, we'll get your slides loaded up right now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kathy, one of the coordinators of London's Older Co-housing Project. Basically, I'll tell you a bit about us. We're a group of older lesbians over 50. And as Gemma said, we want to create an intentional community of 20 to 25 housing units where we each live in our own flat, but we share communal space and facilities. It'll be a not-for-profit development, and we'll have, as Gemma's already said, private ownership, shared ownership, and rental. And it's our intention that all the properties will be affordable under the GLA standards. As for us as a group of women, diversity is really important for us, and it's not just looking diverse because we actually we worked it out when we were doing our annual report. We actually nearly come from all over the world. We come from Caribbean to Latin America and to so many countries around Europe. We're all now based in London and have lived here for between 5 and over 50 years. We've also lived in all corners of the British Isles and beyond, and several of us are migrant to the UK. Our diversity stretches into our education. Some of us were the first in our families to stay at school beyond 15 or go to college and university, and some of us got our first degrees when we were 50. We have a range of medical issues, from mild dyspraxia and diabetes to more serious illnesses such as autoimmune disease, adrenal fatigue, and even cancer. But none of this has stopped us coming together to create this community for older lesbians. So what motivated us to start? Nearly every older lesbian in London has talked about creating a community living. There were lots of squats in the 70s that lesbians created and lived in, but we want to do it in a more intentional way. As Gemma said, we started our journey in 2016 and we're making phenomenal headway. We thought it was going to be a really longish haul, but 4 years after our very first meeting, we're actually at a stage where we're now looking at sites and considering architect designs, which is really, really exciting. And it's made us more determined to make this happen. And the hub have been phenomenal. I was told not to schmooze too much, but we couldn't have done this without Rowan, Gemma, the resources and the expertise that they have brought to our project has just been, it's been inspirational and has kept us pushing. It's also, you know, brought us back down to earth when we might have got a bit carried away. So we'd like to give a massive, massive, massive thank you to the hub, and for anybody out there that's thinking about co-housing, they have a wealth of expertise and resources which they will share with you. So why community-led housing? For us, it's about co-production. It's about having a direct say in what our homes will look like, how they will be built, and creating an intentional community where every single member is invested in creating the space that we'll spend the rest of our lives with. You know, it's about us managing our own community, making decisions about the development, maintenance, overall finances, tending the gardens, organising shared activities. You know, the community is governed in a non-hierarchical, why did I put in that word when I can't say it? Hierarchical way, and uses consensus decision making, and every single resident is encouraged to take part in that process. At the moment, we're a group of, we have 18 full members, and we now have a group of 7, what we're calling associate members, because until we know exactly how many number of units we're going to have, obviously we don't want to take on more women then we'll have units available. So we've got what we call our women in waiting, who are associate members, but they're very much a part of the group. They attend our meetings, they're part of the subgroups that we have. So yeah, I think unless I want to schmooze more, mine is really quickly because I talk really quick, sorry, Gemma. But unless there's anything in particular Gemma or Rowan wanted me to add, I think that's pretty much us. And I really look forward to answering any questions later on. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kathy.
Can I just say one?
Yeah.
Can I just say one more thing? Ouch, the Older Women's Co-housing actually did a workshop for us, and we went up there for a day, and it pushed us so far forward. Yeah, this is how we want to live. It's an amazing space. It's beautiful beyond beauty, And just, it's not just the physical beauty, it's the beauty of this intentional community living together and caring for each other as we grow older. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. We've got Ben saying that the concept of creating intentional community is exciting, and Charlotte says your place sounds like a riot. I want to move in. So yes, please carry on posting your questions and we'll have a discussion at the end. And just building on what Kathy said as well, a lot of the groups we're working with do go and visit other projects in the country or even in Europe, and it's really inspiring to go and visit and network and talk to people that have gone through the process, but also see alternative ways in which the houses might be designed or built or that you might want to live. So maybe that's something we'll pick up in the discussion as well. So finally, our final speaker is Jack from Forest Clt. So I'll say a little bit about community land trusts. Community land trusts, CLTs, are open membership organisations that acquire, build, own and manage homes within a defined geographic area, which might be a neighbourhood or a city. A CLT is a membership organisation where typically £1 membership entitles you to 1 vote in the organisation. With open membership, a CLT isn't just resident-led, but includes members of the wider community. This means they're able to draw on a wider network of people, skills, expertise, and other resources, including funding. As well as being community-led, CLTs are used primarily as a way to protect affordability and perpetuity. With CLTs, it's not just the current residents that benefit from any affordability achieved. An assets lock means the affordability is legally protected so that future residents will also benefit. Homes cannot be sold for inflated profits, and any extra money that the CLT earns or raises must go back into the pot and used for community benefit. The CLTs typically cover a wide geographic area compared to a co-op or co-housing project. They also have the potential to think and act strategically and deliver housing at a scale, whilst also being accountable to the community they represent. Some examples in London you may have already heard of are London CLT, who have developments completed or in progress across 5 sites in London, and Ross in Lewisham, who are currently on site with a 34-unit affordable self-build project. So adding to this list, I'd like to welcome Jack from Forest Clt. Based in Waltham Forest, he's going to tell us about how they're looking to address housing issues experienced by residents in the borough. And once again, please post your questions as we go, and we'll bring it all together at the end for a discussion. So there we go. Should be able to hear Jack now. And
cool.
I am going to bring up.
With it, Gemma.
Yeah, I'm just going to bring it up now. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Forest Clt's presentation. Yep, brilliant.
Right.
Over to you, Jack. If you let me know when you want me to go next, I'll click through for you.
Cool, thank you. Hi, yeah, thanks for the introduction. My name's Jack from Forest Clt. I think Sue, one of our other members, is here, and there may be some more. So hi, Sue, as well. We're a community land trust based in Waltham Forest in North East London, founded and incorporated in 2018, and we were a merger of Family Foundations and Fledgling Forest Clt. So it was 2 groups. One had been going a bit longer than the other, and we joined forces. So at the moment we're 110 signed up members and growing. We've got a cohesive communities funding, which is really helping with our outreach, and we're seeing our member count shoot up, which is brilliant. So yeah, we're a community land trust, which means that we must provide facilities for the wider community, not just our members, and alongside the housing that we're building. We're not for profit. Any profits reinvested back into to provide services. And we're a community benefit society, which means that we must be for the benefit of the community, and we must have a reason to be that rather than a company. So, for example, democratic decision making is at our core. We're run directly by our members, who are mainly local residents. So overall, we exist to build truly affordable housing for local people in Waltham Forest with dedicated community space. So what motivated us to start? So all of our members generally think that the current housing market doesn't provide for their needs, social, economic, or otherwise. So we all got together to try and do things a different way. Our tree, leaf and seed are our different options for membership, and they quite neatly summarise the different motivations for being involved. So tree members are actively looking for housing and want to move in. Leaf members are not necessarily looking to move in, but they do want to be involved and help. And seeds will donate money or time and resources to support us that way. So yeah, overall, motivated by, we think the current offer is not working for local people in Waltham Forest, but we believe we can do better. So next slide, please, Gemma. Cool, thank you. So how are we different to sort of conventional housing that's on offer? So in a nutshell, it's what we're building and how we go about building it. So first, what we're building. This is an example of, this is the Low Hall depot in Waltham Forest, which is a council-owned site. The council will redevelop this site to provide the depot services, but also mixed-use residential development as well. We're currently in conversations about how we can be included on this site, and yeah, how we can build our land trust homes on the development. So what specifically we want to build then? Genuinely affordable housing for local people. So not the minimum definition that's required by law. We're calculated on mean local incomes. The homes will remain in trust, so they can never be lost to the open market. They'll always remain linked to our affordable criteria. Generally mixed housing, so all tenures, to provide a full spectrum of needs, intergenerational homes, so families living, single people, older people aging in place as well. We also, one of our key sort of tenets is genuinely sustainable housing. So again, not the minimum required by law, but we're working with architects to create the most ambitious sort of sustainable approach that we can, which generally means completely zero carbon, with a net increase in biodiversity and everything that comes along by that, comes along with that. And because we're sort of member-led, we can make these decisions. Yeah, next slide, please. So yeah, this is a bit more zoom-in look at, we had some architects develop a kind of feasibility based on what we wanted for the site. So alongside the housing, which is sort of in the bottom right of the image, and the main bit of the image, in the top left is the community space, which is that essential part of what we offer. Next slide, please. So this is that community space in a bit more detail. This is our entry for a Clarion housing competition for innovative housing. And our innovation, we were finalist. Our innovation was the idea that all housing developments of a certain scale should have community infrastructure, because we think it's essential to creating neighbourly places where people have opportunities and just a general good living environment. So this, we've got a youth circus training performance space. One of our board members is the leader of Waltham Forest Youth Circus, and she's really struggling to find decent space. So that was a key part of what we wanted to include, along with local independent retail, training and youth space, providing an offer for young people, opportunities for starting up businesses, and then obviously a community-run cafe, kind of activate that public square, day-to-day uses where everyone in the development can come and spend time, but it's also linking to the wider public and the existing neighbourhoods in Waltham Forest to really knit everything together. Next slide, please. Next, or we could maybe the one after this, please. Cool. So, this is an absolute key thing for us. Really, is how we go about this whole process. And one of our kind of key driving quotes is, "Anything about us without us is not for us," which means we're not interested in having things done for us, which we haven't been involved in or made decisions anymore. So we're a member-led organisation, and we try and include as many local people as we possibly can. So most of our members are local people, and we have outreach programs to get as many people involved as we can. We've got a democratically elected board, and we make decisions democratically. So yeah, communities are not only involved, but they're making these key decisions about what their homes will be like. So we make decisions about where to spend our funding, employing professionals to help us create a business case, or architects. We also created the website and put on a lot of events. So this is a co-design session. This is an early one, December 2018. And this is, we're really trying to unpack with the members. It's a kind of opportunity for group learning. So we'd have architects and developers who are in the membership, or who we'd pay to come along to try and unpack the kind of homes that people would like. But it's also a really good opportunity to gain feedback from the membership. So really specifically finding out what local people in Waltham Forest want and need, what there might be in excess of. I mean, an example of that is Layla with the youth circus. She's explicitly said, you know, there's not enough space for me to practice and perform with my youth circus, which means that if we do manage to build this community hub, we'll have a sort of a ready-made community who are ready to move straight in and use the space which has been designed by them and exactly reflects their needs. So yeah, we do have an event coming up on Thursday, the 9th of July, actually a shameless plug. But this is part of our funding for outreach. We're having a Meet FCLT. We've put together a short film to introduce us, and it will also be a chance to come along and ask a lot more questions. Next slide, please. I think I'm probably a bit over time now. I've got a little bit left.
It's okay. I think we're okay for time.
Cool. Yeah, these are just some more images of the co-design sessions that we have. So we might talk about the local site, about the community hub in more detail, what might be in there. Also understanding sustainable building and those kind of things. Next slide, please. We could probably go to the last slide now, actually. The penultimate slide.
Ooh.
There's just a real last quick point about
that one there.
Oh, next one, sorry. Just the value in our process. So regardless of what we build in the end, all throughout the whole process, it helps people feel empowered. You know, my self-confidence personally has grown, skills, learning about your local community. It's just going through the process in this way is just a really valuable thing we find. So that's a key thing. But yeah, I think that's me. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Jack, for presenting. I'm just going to stop the screen share. We've had a few other questions. We've got Start that have joined us as well. I can see there's other people from Forest that have joined us here today. And a question from Jennifer, just saying, Forest CLT, love your plans. I wonder how you're finding the right architects and building developer to construct your homes to a decent, your decent quality affordable homes. They've had significant safety issues on their estate that's been developed by a top house builder. So maybe that's something we could also be picking up in the discussion, kind of how community housing might be different. And I think we've kind of scheduled in a bit of a break here, so everyone can get another glass of water and come back in, say, we put at 6 o'clock, sorry for stumbling there. If we all join back at 6 o'clock, I'm just going to pass over to my colleague Rowan, who's going to be hosting the discussion.
Thanks, Gemma. I just wanted to say, yeah, thank you to all the speakers. That's been some really valuable insights. And I just wanted to say that after the break, we're going to be opening the discussion up to all the attendees. For anyone that wants to kind of ask a question, we will promote you to a panelist, so we'll be able to kind of see you in the flesh if you're happy with that. I guess I wanted to just kind of frame this discussion and to say that at the moment at CLH London, we're thinking a lot about how we can kind of capture the learnings that are taking place within all of the different groups that we're supporting. I think we have around 60 groups on our kind of list at the moment that we're working with. And there's so much knowledge being created here. And one of the questions we're constantly asking ourselves is how we can kind of take these learnings and apply them to kind of other forms of housing delivery, and how we can deliver a more empowered form of housing at scale. So I wanted to kind of leave with a question while you go and make a cup of tea, which is kind of, as well as the questions that I know you've all got, kind of drilling into the details of all these fantastic projects. It's just to ask kind of what opportunities you see in your community for applying these principles, applying these ideas. So as well as asking our panelists some good questions later, it would be great to hear from all of you about potential opportunities and ideas that you have for developing projects with your community. So I think we'll leave it there, and we'll join back at 6 o'clock with cups of tea and get into the discussion.
Hello everyone, we're back. I hope everyone's comfortable and refreshed.
All right, to get going, Gemma.
Yep, we're on time now. Yep.
Great. So welcome back, everyone. This second session, we're running just as a kind of general Q&A, but slightly more informal. It feels kind of strange that we're having an extended kind of chat with a cup of tea about community-led housing with 60 people in the room. But that's great. So yeah, we're going to open up to the audience. The best way to do it is to ask in the Q&A and or in the chat, and then Gemma will be able to add you as a panelist, and we'll be able to see you, and you can ask your question. I think just to kind of, I guess, to get started, unless there are any kind of burning ones that you want to kind of start with, Gemma.
No, I'll just gather a few, and I think if we start with your questions, I'll just gather a few, and then we can take it from there.
Okay. Well, I'm going to pick up from kind of trying to kind of summarize the ones that have been asked so far. I think we'll bring back the kind of bigger picture questions towards the end, but I think it would be really interesting to hear from each of you kind of where your project is at now. I think particularly thinking about Kathy, I think that was the stage that you're at is quite exciting, and something that we've been kind of talking about a lot recently is the kind of different partnerships that each group has formed in able to to enable them to progress their projects. I think we've kind of talked about partnerships with us quite a lot, and there are other relationships that have been built, partnerships that have been formed that have really kind of helped these projects and processes. So I'd kind of like to start with Kathy and then kind of go on to the other two speakers. But in the meantime, yes, do keep sharing your questions, and we've got. So we were planning. I think we did book in till 7, but we might finish a bit early. Probably aim to wrap up the kind of questions in about half an hour or so, unless it's going really well, and kind of close by 1:45. But let's see how it goes. But yeah, Kathy, I think, can we just have a bit of an update as to kind of where you are, what you're doing now? Oh, and you're muted, sorry.
Unmute. Okay, where we're at the moment, really exciting. I'm going to try and contain myself and not bounce up and down in my chair too much. We've actually been shown a site recently that we're now kind of looking at, will this work for us? And we're at the point where we've had 2 architects send us designs on how they think the site might work for us. Am I allowed to say who we're working with? Okay. Our partner is L&Q, who have been really, really, really good. Considering they haven't, I think this is their first foray into community-led, and in particular co-housing. So we've kind of learned alongside with them. We're learning and they're learning, but they have been really, really good, because we have been quite demanding.
Just to clarify, they're a housing association, not they?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, London Quadrant. We've been quite demanding in kind of how we want to work, and this co-production, and kind of pinning down the ways that we think this will work best. So we've been shown a site. We're just about to get presentations of both architects. We've been through the plans that they've sent us, and now we've kind of asked questions and kind of throwing questions back at them to kind of dig deeper into the development. I mean, I think what people need to understand, this is so, it sounds like, woohoo, I'm gonna get the keys in a minute and move in. It's not quite straightforward as that. We're in the very early stages, but it's still really exciting, because it's a push forward from kind of thinking that nothing's going to happen for a few years to suddenly being shown this site. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment. We're just sorry, Rowan, you look like you're going to ask me something.
Well, just a follow-up question from Ben is about the nature of that partnership, and I guess how that came about.
Well, basically, we approached housing associations and said, hey, we want to do this co-housing. Do you fancy partnering with us? And to be fair, a lot of housing associations were actually interested, but the size of our project is actually relatively quite small in comparison to some development, building developments. And L&Q, they really liked it from the moment we kind of first presented them, sent them our business plan. They seem to be on board and have been ever since.
Thanks.
That answers the question.
I can see that Ben's joined us, and I'll invite you to, in a minute, Ben, to kind of give us share a bit about kind of what you're doing as well, because I think there's some exciting stuff happening there. But I just wanted to kind of continue that conversation around, you know, the what you're talking about, Kathy, around partnerships, kind of really highlights the need for kind of groups to expand their skills and knowledge. It's, you know, it's not the case that everyone knows and has the ability and capacity to start building homes from the offset. So, and I'd kind of open that question out to Amin and Jack. Jack, I don't know if I think as a CLTs are kind of particularly structured to bring in the kind of skills and resources of the wider community. I just wondered if that was something that you could share your experiences on, and then Ben, will come back to you in just a sec. Oh, you're muted.
So is the question about how we sort of draw in skills and then utilize those essentially? Yeah. We sort of, our member group started kind of word of mouth mainly around Waltham Forest, and a group of people who were interested in creating homes, but then also people who had skills that they wanted to contribute. So there's a number of architects and project managers and people that work for housing associations. So we have those skills already in the group, which are really useful. And then recently we've had a bigger push on membership, and we've run some events last year. We've shared some videos, making contact with community groups, and all of a sudden we're getting a lot wider membership. And yeah, I mean, we get cost consultants that help and come and help with our viability, community organising. It's everything that you can think of. We need to do really, and we cover most of it. And I think the challenge at the moment is actually we've got so many members coming in. It's managing. It's giving them something productive to do, and then managing that workload. So we're thinking about maybe employing a volunteer coordinator to do that potentially. Yeah.
Thanks. I mean, I don't know if there was anything you wanted to add on that subject of building partnerships and needing to kind of expand your skill sets. You're also muted. If not, then we can move on.
So you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, in terms of partnerships, our main partner to begin with was Harrow, and I suspect if the council will always have some bearing into these projects. So it's very, very important that you keep them as your main partner and know who they are and what they want and what you want from them and what they want from you. That's one major partner. Community housing, obviously, your second major partner. And partnerships will develop as you go along. You may not have, you don't necessarily have to go out looking for them. As the needs arise, you will make partnerships. The other partner or advisor, if you like, that we had initially when we started was the Confederation of Cooperative Housing, CCH. Very good advice from them. Haven't been in touch with them for a while. So partnerships will form, and you need to manage those partnerships in a positive way as to what you want to do. Obviously, in the future, we'll probably have to have partners within the finance sector. So they will develop as we go along, and obviously they are important. In terms of individual skills within the group, we are a very small group, but we're lucky enough to have somebody who has bookkeeping skills, and one of the other cooperative members got some building skills. They're good to have these skills, but obviously, again, you can pick them up or teach them to yourselves as you go along. They're not showstoppers, so if you're looking to build one of these projects, go ahead and do it, and things will come together, hopefully.
Thanks, Amin. I'd like to just, we've got Ben who's joined us. Ben, I asked one of your questions, but I also wanted to give you the chance to introduce yourself, and then maybe we can go to Gemma and feed in some of the questions in the Q&A. Ben, do you want to just explain the project you're working on and any other questions that you have?
Okay, thank you. Rowan, thank you so much. I mean, Katie and Jack for your presentations. It's been quite a learning insight, and I think we are pretty new. We're just starting off, so we're Beam River Community-led Trust, located in the London Borough of Havering, with Barking and Dagenham, Newham, Redbridge, where members of Western East African community will be part of our group, and we're essentially looking to empower our community to own homes. We don't want them to face the existential threat of London. Is becoming challenging for our community to stay within the London axis, and we don't think that is okay. And just learning from Zara, from what the Zara project is, I think that appears to be the future, because that's the kind of life we're used to. Social care within the Western East African community is a communal affair. We don't have organized social care systems. We have family networks that support family members to ensure that people are not isolated, they're not lonely. We care for ourselves. And we think we need to bring that same culture to the UK. And just listening to what Zara said, feel a bit more inspired. And COVID-19 has also shown the need for more, the non-orthodox approach to social care. Care for the elderly, care for members of your community becomes more critical. And the more people live together, the better their mental health, and the more they are able to stay together, and the more they can see how they can support one another. So we've been quite supported by a community-led London Hub, and we want to thank the team for the support so far. And this is a learning insight for us, and we hope that at some point in time, we may be able to get in touch with some of the members, some of the CLTs, to learn a bit more what you're doing. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ben. Yeah, that question of kind of learning, well, building care into the way we design and live in our homes has really come to the fore in the last few months. Gemma, I think there's quite a few questions coming through on the Q&A.
Yeah, we have quite a lot of questions. Some around finance, a lot more about the partnership with L&Q that Kathy might be able to expand on. I'm going to bring in Poonam, who's going to ask about, is there any criteria to meet and get started with the new projects? And I think that's a question that Ben had as well. So it's about membership building. But
do you want to ask that question? Was that phrased right?
Is there any criteria to meet to get started with a project?
I was asking Poonam if you wanted to ask
it. Sorry. You're in.
Okay. Yes, yeah, my question is, first of all, for Kathy, the project which she is doing, is it just for lesbian women, or is it for other people as well? And then the next question is, I don't know who can answer this question, and that is about any criteria to get started with the project.
Oh, do you want me to answer?
Do you want to cover that one quickly?
Yeah. Thank you for your question. Yes, we're what's called an intentional community. So our commonality is we're all lesbians over 50 who live in London. So if you're an older lesbian over 50 who lives in London and is interested in our project, then yeah, come take a look.
Okay.
And what was the second question?
What is the criteria to get started with this project?
I think for me,
For
it's
any community, for any CLT project, not just basically for your one.
okay. I mean, for me, I would say membership. Once you've got a membership, then you've got the start of a project.
So yeah, I think we would always say that as when you have a group, then you have a project, and formalizing your what brings you together, your vision, your objectives, what you want to achieve. It's, I mean, the point is that it's resident led, so it's for you to define kind of what's bringing you together, and then there's support available to kind of formalize that, and look at how what kind of housing options can meet those needs. I think, Gemma, we've got Safa on the call.
Yep.
Hi,
Hopefully
Safa.
we can hear you.
Yeah, hiya. Thank you for giving me a chance to ask a question. This is a question partly to Jack, but also anyone else that might have some opinions or knowledge on how community land trusts work. But Jack, with your project, once it exists, once it's actually buildings, and all the development has taken place, who exactly is it that gets to move into the properties? My understanding of one good way that community land trusts work is that it's for local residents, and so is it exactly those residents that have helped put into the design process that are also going to either become tenants or buy the properties, or does it get opened up to wider London residents, and is there then a danger that it doesn't stay local as such?
Am I off mute? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, really good question, and I can't completely answer it because we're still deciding that ourselves, because it's such a complex thing. But generally, like you say, there'll be some key criteria in our allocations policy, it's called, which is essentially how we decide who we allocate the homes to. One of which is, a Waltham Forest resident, but then you get into the detail of if someone has been forced out of Waltham Forest for housing reasons, there's a certain timescale that they are still eligible. There's all sorts of affordability criteria as well, so that might be income testing, and also, like say, criteria about how you're involved with the CLT. So you would have to sign up to say that you're happy to sort of live in the community that we're proposing, and there's, the more volunteer hours that you do with us or someone else in Waltham Forest can build a case. So yeah, we're still in the process of developing that as a group. So it's another co-design session. Is we all get together and sit around the table with professionals who understand these things, and we thrash it out basically.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Safa, I think you've kind of picked up on one of the kind of key differentiating factors between different types of community-led housing project here, which is they can typically fall into kind of two groups. One which is projects that are developing homes for themselves to live in, or developing projects for the wider community. I think typically CLTs fall into that latter category, and because of the nature of being a membership organisation, you might have, I don't know how many members Forest has got, Jack, but
10 plus and counting.
Say that again.
110 and
yeah.
counting. It's probably more than that now.
So there's kind of two levels of kind of engagement, I guess. One which is the membership, and one which is the residents. But residents still kind of have kind of one vote in that process, and selecting the residents is kind of what Jack's referring to. I think in there's you draw up something called an allocations policy. So there's that kind of that process there. I can see that we've got Lorraine and Leslie on the who have joined us. Gemma, any? I don't know.
Yeah, Lorraine and Leslie have quite a similar question for Kathy about the. Well,
Okay.
I'll let them speak.
All right. Yeah. Leslie, do you want to go first, and then we can invite Lorraine in? You're muted. Maybe we'll.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry, I'm part of a CLT in Westminster, North Westminster, Queen's Park area, and we're hoping to do a similar thing up this way. I was wondering about the partnership between that one of the speakers was talking about between L&Q and the CLT. In that, how much feed-in could the CLT have to the development, and then once it's built, what would be the situation? Who would collect the rents or fix the roof or whatever needs doing?
Thanks. Before we answer that, I'll just I'll ask Lorraine to ask her question, because I think they were related. Lorraine.
Hello, this is Lorraine. Question for Kathy. Yeah, I mean, you've already been asked.
As well, Lorraine. People might.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I was just saying. Sorry, do you want to introduce yourself as well? People might.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Lorraine from Heads Together Housing Cooperative in Croydon. We recently incorporated our group, and we are so much strong in community development and engagement. So it's mainly building for single parents and single people who are on low income. Yeah, so my question for Kathy is, in terms of, those conversations you've already been asked, what I wanted to ask on top of that was like, what sort of things, or, you had put in place beforehand when you started those conversations? Did you have anything like business plans? What did you have in terms of documentation to really initiate and facilitate those conversations with L&Q?
Thanks. Thanks, Lorraine. Yeah, I think, Kathy, I'll pass over to you.
Okay, in terms of, we had a business plan. It's been refined lots of times, and we feel like it's now very cohesive and says exactly what we want. Having even a basic business plan, it doesn't have to be pages and pages of legalized documents. Basically, your business plan just lays out what it is you want and how you want to get there, and what the end product is going to be and who it's going to be for. And that will give anybody looking at working with you an idea of, okay, this is a project we can work with, or actually this is too small for us, this is too big for us, this is not in our remit at the moment. So you do need to have, like I say, if you do a basic plan, and then somebody like the Hub can really, really help you make that a more concise plan, which can then go out to, we sent our business plan out to a lot of housing associations. We didn't pin our hopes on one. We went for a particular area because we were looking at northeast end of London. But yeah, I would advise having a business plan, definitely.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think my reflections on your process, Kathy, has been that it's a case of the partnerships that they build over time. Kind of quite what the partnership will be that actually delivers the home is still a question mark. But the initial proposal that you put forward was enough to start a conversation, and then over a number of years, that conversation has grown to a point where both parties are now looking at how they can work together more closely to actually deliver something. So I think kind of thinking about it in that kind of phased kind of way, that there's a certain level of detail that you need to have the conversation to form a partnership. It will undoubtedly change over the years and become more detailed.
Did Leslie, what was Leslie's question? I don't want to miss Leslie's. What was Leslie's question? Just make sure I haven't missed it.
Was Leslie, did that cover yours as well? Or you're muted.
No, it was about your partnership with L&Q and what they were hoping from it and what you were hoping from it, and then how it was going to play out once the houses are built as well. Will you just take them over and own them, or will they own them and rent them to you?
We're still kind of figuring that all out, but we envisage with L&Q that they will be the developers. We're looking to partner with a registered provider who will manage the shared ownership and the rentals. So basically L&Q is our development partner at the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. I think yes, it's a work in progress, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've got two questions on finance from Elena and Maurice, who've joined us. Elena, do you want to go first?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for organising these, and thank you to all the speakers for sharing their experience. I'll just introduce myself. I'm a senior teaching fellow at the Bartlett School of Planning, and I also work with community organisations, not with community land trusts, although I have some experiences of one. My question was specifically about how funding for your proposals, not just the kind of application stage, but the actual development will work. If you have any understanding of how your partners, for instance, will fund the proposal, and similarly to what was previously discussed about the relationship with L&Q, similarly, L&Q will probably have a say on the type of tenures and on the kind of structure of those tenures. I was interested also in hearing about the other two experiences in relation to how they were going to be funded and how that might have an impact on the tenures. Thank you.
Thanks. Maurice, do you want to ask your question as well, just in case there's any similarities and we can pose them together?
Yeah, sure. So my question was to Amin, and it was a question about how they're intending to finance the development of their housing. I don't know whether I missed it. I wasn't sure whether they were partnering up with somebody to do that or whether they were sorting out the financing themselves.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So I think kind of general questions on financing, we could probably go to each of you, and let's start with Amin. You're muted. You'll need to unmute yourself, Amin. Question around kind of financing, not just I guess the early stage that we're at now, but how you envisage financing the build and the kind of capital finance.
So let's go back to the very first stage. So we were very lucky that the council financed initially. So we received a lot of money from them to galvanize our project and make it a solid entity. And then obviously we had money from community housing. Going forward, if we're lucky enough to build these things, obviously we are going to apply for a mortgage, a company mortgage. So it's not going to be individuals, but the company will apply for the mortgage. And that's how it's going to be financed. Obviously, we are hoping to apply for GLA grants as well. So it's a combination of grants, mortgage, and a bit of our own saving. It's not much, but it's there, a bit of our own savings. And that's how we are planning to finance it. Let's see how it goes, so that's our plan.
Thanks. I mean, yeah, I think we'll, Jack, do you want to go?
Yeah, I better caveat that finance isn't my strong point, but I'll tell you what I know anyway. Yeah, so there's the pre-development costs and the sort of capital costs. So it's the cost to sort of design and develop the project up to the point of building, and then there's obviously the money that's needed to build it. And our sort of pre-development funds mainly from the GLA, the hub, obviously massively supportive. The Community Land Trust Network is providing some cohesive communities funding for outreach. The Waltham Forest Council as well have given us some funding, and we raise money from the members in the community as well. And then when it comes to the sort of capital cost, the money to actually build the buildings, again, I think we're eligible to apply to the GLA, the Affordable Homes Fund. And I think, I understand ethical banks can potentially lend us, depending on the tenures, if they're mortgages or if it's rental. I think Tridos is a bank that can give us a long-term development loan. And then we're looking at sort of crowdsourcing as an option, and things like land value capture, which I don't really know the first thing about, but as a group we're getting together and exploring all these different options. It's a good question about the tenure, because yeah, if it turns out that we decide that they're all going to be rented from the CLT, that'll have a massive implication, as opposed to if they're subsidised sale, because in that subsidised sale you can pay off a lot of the loan straight away. So yeah, got to consider it all at once, I think.
Thanks, Jack. Kathy, is there anything you want?
Yeah, pretty much the pre-development stuff are very similar to Jack. Just small grants to help us do these pre-development stuff. Development, we envisage it will work that the buyers will put in, the people that are buying properties will have equity to spend. Then the registered provider will buy, in essence, the shared ownership and the rentals. So that's where that one, and then we need to raise all the money for the communal areas. That comes down to our responsibility, and we've recently created a fundraising group, so they're kind of putting their heads together to look at how that, because we can't do this without a communal. It won't be what we want it to be without those communal areas, the garden, you know, a communal kitchen, and living space, etc. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. I think I just kind of add to that. I think there's no kind of one way of financing these developments, but there are challenges, and it wouldn't be right to kind of let everyone assume that it's particularly easy to raise finance for these types of projects. There is yes, there's revenue funding available until 2023 currently. There are capital grants available. They're fairly small considered historically, compared to grant funding that was available maybe kind of 20-30 years ago when the first co-ops kind of started to emerge. And so there's typically a funding gap or an equity gap, and kind of how you finance that gap is there's kind of various ways of doing it. I think co-ops, for example, have the ability to raise loan stock. They also have the ability to lend to each other. Something that we're particularly interested in exploring is how we can kind of untap the resource that exists within more established co-ops in London that have, for example, paid off their debts and are sitting on quite a lot of wealth. With community land trusts, they have the ability to offer community shares. That's undoubtedly something that Forest have been considering as well. And yeah, so there are ways of kind of fundraising to fill the gap but I think it's fair to say that there usually is a gap to fill. Was there anything? I'm aware that finance is a big question, so I wanted to make sure that just check if there was anything else.
Yeah, I think I'm going to read one out. It's from Charlotte, said would rather be read out, and I think it taps into this question around finance, and it's about risk. So I'm wholeheartedly behind the idea of co-housing and mutual ownership, and just housing being more than just shelter and fulfilling more social needs. But bring me down to earth. My question is, what do you think the risks are to the project not coming to fruition? Have you had any moments where it almost fell apart? Practically, what would you say are the biggest dangers to try and avoid in order to build a really successful project? So what are the challenges, I guess, have our panelists come across? And how have you worked to mitigate them?
Good question. Does anyone want to offer a response to that? I've got some thoughts, but
I'm actually just trying to get up our risk register. So
right.
have a quick look at, that. Yeah, one way of mitigating is to create a risk register so that you kind of you're pre-warned of all the potential risks. Okay, one of the things we've had to look at, because we are an intentional community, and I did read somebody had a question about, well, if you've got a registered provider, aren't they going to be able to say who lives in the property? So what we've had to do, we've had to have a very, very thorough void policy that would satisfy any registered provider, because any registered provider we partnered with would know that we're an intentional community. And obviously one of their concerns would be, well, we can't afford empty property, so how are you going to make sure there is a constant stream of old lesbians wanting housing? And basically there is a very big stream of older lesbians kind of looking to live in this type of community, but that's not good enough for a registered provider to just say that. So what we've had to do is create a very, very tight policy around voids. And I mean, there are so many steps in it, I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but the very, very last one is, all right, you can have anybody, but we've taken steps to make sure we don't ever get to the point where our community is broken up. So that's the risk that I can think of off the top of my head, is making sure that we have got a constant stream of lesbians waiting to move in. If anybody else wants to jump in, Jack or me.
I think the risks you're working through at the moment with LOLC are kind of really kind of focused around the kind of long-term management of those homes. And I think my response to that question would be that there's risks at every stage, and maybe other speakers have some thoughts on kind of the risks that they're at the stage that they're at. Jack, or I mean,
jump in.
Yeah.
I guess there's the kind of risks to us as an organisation, and then there's the risks kind of when we're developing, so other people's view of us as an organisation. So, I mean, some of the key ones are just making sure that we're moving forward effectively. Like, burnout is a key thing. You know, you get key volunteers who are really driven and have time, who do a lot of work, but then if their circumstances change and or they burn out, it's managing that, and just really clear communication and making time at board meetings to ask people how they are is definitely helping with that. I think realistic expectations, you know, making sure that people don't think that they're going to join as a member and then in next month they're going to be moving into their house. It's about being really clear about the process of building. And then risks, as I think, because we've been talking with Waltham Forest council, and I think they might see, well, a council might see a CLT as being a bit risky because of our democratic decision making, and also if we're drawing from various funding pots as well. They might look at a conventional developer who's got billions of pounds of American pension money or whatever to just plough straight on, versus us who might we're not going to meander, but yeah, I think that's when I think of risk and CLTs, that's one key thing. Yeah.
Thanks, Jack. I mean, I don't know if there was anything you had thoughts you had on the kind of risks to your project.
Yeah, so just want to repeat what everybody else said. There's obviously a risk to any big project. One of the risks that we've identified is that our large families can become smaller families, and then how would you manage the bigger houses? So the way we've designed it is to make one house into two if need be. You try and mitigate those risks by planning ahead. But in terms of our project, we don't see any big risks that might stop us right now. So we're going ahead and we're trying to mitigate every risk that we've got. That's it, basically.
Thanks, Helen. So I hope that kind of goes some way to answering the question. I think, yeah, my mind first jumped to the first risk is the group, and are you functioning well as a group? That's the first thing that we would look for. And I think Jack made the point of saying, you know, okay, yes, are you doing all the tasks? Are you also kind of having fun with each other? Are you getting to know each other? Are you building a relationship, building trust? Because yes, without that, that's the biggest risk, is that the group falls apart. There's a quick question from Ben, which perhaps I'll read out, which is on the day-to-day resourcing of a CLT, Jack, and then we'll just go to Jackie for a last question. But yeah, Jack, I think the question is around, yeah, kind of how do you resource the CLT?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I guess we have key members who are, well, everyone's more involved than everyone else, and we have people. Well, we define roles. So there's and we also define teams as well. So there's a project team who'll be working on project-based things. So that's looking at land and design. We'll have a fundraising team. There'd be a communications team, and then members who are already existing who've got those skills. So we've got someone who's great at websites. They'll obviously be running those teams. And I think it's a case as well as just constantly trying to skill up. So we've got architects and project managers who, in their day job, they can talk the language of certain elements of what we're doing straight away. But it's about them learning, you know, the language of comms or how to run a board, etc., and vice versa. So someone might be an excellent secretary and can run a watertight board, and then they'll be learning about design, etc., etc. So it's assessing what you can do, doing it effectively, and then constantly be learning new things. I think works really well.
Thanks. Jackie, do you want to come in with your question?
Yes, thanks. It just occurred to me that this is probably the first Zoom meeting in the last 3 months where not a single person has mentioned the word COVID, which is quite refreshing in a way. But my question really relates to that. I mean, one thing we've learned that's been highlighted by the whole crisis is the extent of inequality in this country, and particularly in London. And you know, given that there is a growing movement of build back better, you know, we don't want to go back to how we were operating before. It occurs to me that community-led housing should really be able to play a key part in addressing inequalities and making sure we don't go back to the normal, what was normal before. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts about that.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if anyone particularly wants to come in. I've got some thoughts on that. And anyone who's spoken already, who who's been invited into the panel that wants to respond, I think if you want to kind of raise your hand, I think you can do that. I think from our part, I think we see our role in capturing the lessons that have been are being learned through all of these projects that we're working with, and really using that to challenge the way in which housing delivery takes place, conventional housing delivery takes place, and to influence a more empowered and inclusive form of housing delivery at scale. And these are the questions that are really that we're really interested in, and that we'll be exploring over the coming months. I don't know if anyone else wants to kind of come in on that question.
I've added Trish W.
Ah, okay. Great. You're muted.
You may unmute and unmute. Or maybe we could go over to Ben, because Ben's been commenting and said that he absolutely agrees.
Oh yeah, Ben?
Yeah, I agree with Jackie 100%. I mean, it makes a great deal of sense. I think what COVID-19 has shown, the disproportionate death on the Black minority group, and the income inequality is all, for me, I say at the root of all of that is the fact that we need to think into the future, and thinking into the future cannot be more inspiring other than to adapt what Katie said earlier on, building an intentional community. And that intentional community for me is the future of social care, and that needs to be pushed in an agenda, because the whole idea of people being alone, being lonely, being left alone, just to sort things out for themselves and relying on the state for care is not going to work. It's not working now, and it's not going to work tomorrow, neither in the future. So the future lies really with homes that are built with an intentional community view, supported by people who can identify with the plight of their immediate community. That, for me, is the future. And I think if government looks at this as a business case, rather than spending so much money on developing on the social care sector, perhaps more investment in social housing, especially community-led housing that are focused on community members, taking care of members of their community, appears to be the way to go, and that appears to be the future. So I agree with Jackie. It makes a great deal of sense if we start thinking in that direction.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, I think it's a massively important point that the principles that underpin community-led housing around resident control, having a voice in the housing that we all live in, are not things that should be kind of stuck in the margins of housing delivery. These are principles that should be, and that we do campaign for, that should exist at scale across in everyone's homes. Trish, I don't know if we're able to hear you. You're still muted, but you're welcome to come in if you'd like to contribute.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I was muted there before, and I didn't realise I had my hand up. So apologies for that. But anyway, yes, as somebody who I'm involved with the Waltham Forest CLT, but my work experience is also in mental health services, and I just wanted to reiterate how important it is around getting the wider community to actually care. One thing that COVID-19, I'll mention it again, apologies, has shown us is that the wider community, we are very, very divided. And I see this with my clients. They don't know their neighbours. They are really quite isolated and in a lot of ways ostracised. And I think it is important to, in any community build, that we actually understand what's actually going on for these people and their narratives, and that they can be you know, valuable members of the community, because quite often they have a lot of skills that they may have lost through disability or through other mental health issues, and they're just forgotten about. And I'm an occupational therapist by background, so I've worked with people that have made absolutely fantastic contributions to the wider society once they've got to know what's going on in the wider society.
Thanks, Trish. Yes, I think we all kind of second that, and I think this conversation needs to be seen as the kind of start of many. These are conversations that we will be engaging with over the coming months, and welcome any kind of contribution to those, and we hope that you'll join us at future events, and we kind of drill into these questions about how these principles that we're all kind of working towards can be kind of appreciated and felt more widely. I think we're going to draw to a close, unless there were any kind of last minute thoughts from our panelists that are here. Jack?
I just want to say thanks so much for everyone for coming out. It's just so amazing to see all this energy coming out and harnessing it and working together, and we've got the GLA supporting, and we can all support each other, and I just, I think there's a real energy to harness, and I totally agree with what Ben and Trish were saying, and I think we all feel that we want those kind of supportive communities, and even from like a cold, hard financial viewpoint, you know, happy, healthy people cost less for the government. You know, it's just from every point, it's just the way forward. So yeah, hopefully, like I say, this is a start of more meetings between us all, definitely.
Yeah, housing equals healthcare, I think, is going to be a big topic coming forward.
Oh, yeah.
Kathy. Hi, Kathy.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Jack said. Thank you so much. And for me, this makes it even more exciting. I didn't realise just how many projects there were, and if people that are watching this that are thinking about it, I just think this is the future, this is the way forward, and it's scary, and it is, do not be mistaken, it is really hard work and really time consuming, but really, really worth it. And so I would encourage everybody, and thank you to the Hub, we love you, and thank you for everybody for your questions and taking time out of your busy days to come and listen to us.
Thanks, Kathy. Unless, Amin, is there anything you want to close with?
Just to say what Ben said makes perfect sense to me. And governments always look at things with the prism of money. Where it makes sense to do it the way Ben does it, and we want to do it, to have elderly within our houses. It makes perfect sense not to have these old people homes. Well, I know not everybody fits into that sort of criteria, but where you can have larger houses where you can care for your own parents, surely that's going to be a better option than sending them away to these institutions. And it makes perfect economic sense to have to do it this way. So that's my closing statement. It makes perfect economic sense, and it makes perfect social sense. And you're right, housing is the next healthcare, or whatever we said. That absolutely connects with me. And thank you very much for arranging this meeting.
Thanks. I mean, yeah, I'd second everything. It's been fantastic to see so much energy here. Yeah, do get in touch if you are interested in continuing any of these conversations. Yeah, we're here to try and do more of this for many more people, and are interested in kind of having any conversations towards achieving that. So
yeah, Charlotte's just.
And oh, sorry, Gemma.
Yeah, Charlotte's just put. Actually, I just wanted to build on what you just said. Is there a way to keep this conversation going? There are still currently 50 people on the call, so we've still got everybody here, and we really would like to do this again. So the thing that's really useful for us to do it again is to hear your feedback, how this evening went, what kind of topics you thought were really useful that we could perhaps talk about in more detail. As Kathy said, there are projects all over London, so we could be inviting a lot more kind of projects to speak. So please get in touch. info@Community-Led Housing London. We'd love to hear your feedback, and we would really like to organise something like this again.
Yeah, and yeah, and talk about it. We're on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Pose questions, provoke. Yeah, and let's keep the conversation going. And we'll be planning further events to kind of bring that all together later in the year.
Yes, just to answer Morris's question very quickly, we have recorded the session, and we will put that online as soon as possible. There might be some editing, etc. that needs to be done, but when it is, we will mail out to our mailing list. So if you're not already joined on the mailing list, please join, because it's the best way to hear the latest news of Community-Led Housing London. And I'll also email everybody who's been on the call with a link to the recording.
Great. All right. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, everybody.
We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.